Russian, I know from my parents. So in my household, we spoke Russian. That's how I picked up the Russian language. German, I grew up in Germany, so through my surroundings, I picked up German. So these two came very naturally to me. With English, we did have English classes in school, and yes, they gave me like a basis, but honestly, school-taught English is absolute garbage, and yeah, it's not good at all. How I learned English is through video games mainly. I never watched movies in English. I always felt that I didn't understand enough, so I didn't even bother. But it was mainly through video games, through being forced to play video games in English because they weren't like readily available in German or anything, or online gaming. Counter-Strike Source was a big thing, but that was before Global Offensive came out. I played a lot of CSS. Oh, wrong color. I played a lot of CSS, and a lot of the time people were talking English, so I was kind of forced to learn it. I was also on the internet a lot, you know, English Facebook meme sites and stuff, you know. So I kind of picked up English that way, mainly the reading and writing part, and kind of also listening. But not the fourth major part, which is speaking, which I never picked up in that way at all. Speaking is... when I moved to Belgium, I was forced to speak English. Like, I'm in an English or Dutch-speaking environment. I didn't have a choice. English is the one language I know of these two. I didn't have a choice. I was forced to speak English. So that's how I started working on these skills. Initially, of course, with probably a heavy German accent. I don't remember genuinely. But as time moved on, I'm someone who tries to be as perfect as I possibly can at the things I'm doing. So I listen to others, how others speak, what I liked about their speech patterns, what I liked about their pronunciations. Like, for example, the R. I never really... For example, never... Back in the day, I would have said never, you know, in like this German way. But I heard that many people say never with like this R at the end, so I picked that up and I thought to myself, okay, that's probably a thing that's, you know, more natural sounding. And that's how I started to pick things up, and, you know, by literally being forced to talk the language on a daily, that's how I started to, well, talk it. Our thing depends whether you speak a Rothic or non-Rothic dialect of English. Yeah, that could very well be. Yeah, actually, yeah, true. But it's just a thing I picked up while living here, and it sounded more natural to me. It sounded by default like that. Like, adding that to my speech would make me sound more like a native speaker, so I did that. But yeah, what I would recommend is just immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Actually, when I started learning Japanese... Actually, let me show you. When I learned Japanese, I started learning with apps. My personal favorite is Memrise. M-E-M-R-I-S-E. Memrise. Not Duolingo. Fuck Duolingo. Because Duolingo... It's a nice game. It's not a good app for learning languages. Memrise is also not the best app for learning language, but it's a nice way to get started learning a language. And then you start adding more resources, like Anki, like... for Japanese specifically, I started learning Japanese at some point. Like Anki, like, you know, others. And with Japanese specifically, I learned the hiragana, the katakana, which are 52 signs each that represent a combination of two sounds. So letters that you could read, so to say. But then the kanji are, what are they called? Like what are they called? Yeah, basically symbols that you have just to know how to read, that you cannot read like letters, but just that you see and have to know how to read. You cannot just... You can see the meaning, but you cannot just read them. Not syllables. No. Logograph... No. Anyway. And what I actually did was literally... This is how I learned my hiragana. I literally... Oh no, it's so wide, camera, please. You can kind of read it. You see, I literally wrote the exact same symbol multiple times with the Romaji, with the Roman letter version of it. And wrote it multiple times, every single one that I would learn through that app, multiple times whenever it showed up in the map. Just so I would also get the writing down, the writing into my system, so I would learn to read, learn to write, learn to understand, as much as I possibly could. Look at this is a whole... Yes! You see this? You see this shit? I have pages upon pages of literally just that. And these things would get more complicated, including kanji, including phrases, including also simpler things again. It would be a mix of everything. It just keeps going. You see this? I would do this every single day just to get these symbols, these words into my system, these kanji into my system. It just keeps going on and on and on and on and on and on. What is this? I don't know. And even more. It just keeps going on, okay? I did this every single day. And with the words I didn't know yet, for example, this one, amai, it says it means sweet. I didn't know that, so I put it here. With words that I did know, I didn't write that anymore because I just wanted to get the writing down. That's how I tried to learn Japanese to as best as I could without having anyone Japanese in my vicinity. And when I felt like I was at a level where I was ready to go to a slightly bigger level, to the next level, not that I was able to read it, but when I was like at, like, for example, I knew like 100-ish kanji. Like I knew the kana, I knew the hiragana, the katakana perfectly by heart, and I knew about like 100 kanji. I was like 80, 90-ish kanji deep. I was like 150-ish kanji deep, but 80 to 90 that I knew perfectly, that I understood perfectly. And then I felt like, okay, it's time to step up the level. So I actually bought a book. This one. This is a book written completely in Japanese. With no romaji, with no nothing. It includes kanji, it includes everything. It is a proper Japanese book for Japanese people, but it's a children's book. And it's the book that I was, through my research, the internet told me that this is the book that just so happens to be the best for beginners. It is Kiki's Delivery Service, actually. So I thought, it's double interesting. I like the movie, and this book is supposed to be the best, like, beginner-friendly book, because it's, first up, it's an actual novel. It has a story. It has 240-something pages. 240 pages exactly. It has 240 pages. It's a proper novel. It has a story, a beginning, middle, and end. It has proper Japanese, but it's a children's story, so it has simple Japanese. It has Japanese that a layman might be able to understand, to pick up as they go along, potentially. So what I would do literally is I would start to read this, and actually, literally, you can see this with pencil, actually mark things. For example, this kanji, I didn't know what it was, so I actually, in hiragana, wrote how it's read. And I also googled this kanji, I googled what it means, and in hiragana, I wrote how it's read. If I wasn't able to memorize what it means, I would Google this shit again. I wouldn't write it down here. That would make it too easy. I would Google it again. I would only know how it's actually read, because that was more important to me. The understanding of it, I could Google anytime. The reading of it, I had to nail. And that's what I did. I tried to read as much as possible. I took my time with it. I took like, what did the page take me? Probably like an hour to read through one page. Or through one line, honestly. But I did it, and I tried my best to actually get into it, to learn it, to get as deep into it as possible. And the next step would have been changing my computer OS to Japanese, changing my phone to Japanese, completely immersing myself into the language, trying to listen to Japanese music, potentially podcasts, not really my thing, but, movies. Try to immerse myself into the language as much as possible, step by step. That is how I would approach language learning, and that is how I have approached language learning in the past. And as far as I got, it was very effective. I made good progress. But in the end, I realized I don't know anyone who actually speaks Japanese, so I would have no practice speaking. And what's the thing you do most when using a language? It's speaking. You don't read all the time, you don't listen all the time, you don't write all the time, you speak all the time. I didn't know anyone, so it felt kind of pointless to me, so I stopped. But this was my approach, and it helped. And it was, in my opinion, it is a helpful approach. Total immersion is a good approach. I put everything to English when I was learning that. Yeah, exactly, like, let's be honest, how else are you gonna, like, really learn the language? Like, you can only get so far with textbooks, with apps, right? At some point you have to, if you want to learn the language as much as possible, as natively as possible, at some point you have to immerse yourself in the language. How else are you gonna get to a, at least like somewhat native sounding level? If that's your goal, at least. If you just want to get a basic understanding of some of the things, yeah, sure, Duolingo is gonna be enough. But beyond that, sorry, no. Oh my god, that was a long rant and I hope it helped.